I'm Sienna. I'm the kid.
I'm Sarah. I'm the mom.
This is Queer Kid Straight Mom.
Let's talk. Welcome back to Queer Kids Straight Mom. We're a little later than we wanted to be in getting this episode out because we've had a busy few weeks. Sienna and Irene got married 2 weeks ago, which is exciting. Congratulations. The wedding was beautiful, but there's been a lot going on. So we're back and we are actually talking about something that has been on our minds after some of the family dynamics surrounding Sienna's wedding. While we had so many wonderful guests at this wedding, Sienna and Irene had friends and family from all over the country come to support them. We also had family members on both sides who refused to come and who did not want to acknowledge, still won't acknowledge their marriage. Well, that's not something we want to dwell on because there was a lot of joy in the day and the people that were there mean so much to us. We're not focused on the people who didn't come, but it did kind of get me thinking this whole idea of chosen family or found family, which is a big topic in the LGBTQ plus community because there has been a history of family rejection for a long time for queer people, and often they turn to friends to kind of fill that gap. It can be a mix. It's not always just, nobody in your family supports you, so you only have this family that is made up of friends. I think in hopefully a lot of cases, in our family's case, you have a lot of supportive family members too. But, Irene had a friend walk her down the aisle because her parents didn't come. And so in a way, her friend who walked her down the aisle was sort of filling into a familial role. According to GLAAD, chosen or found families play an important role in the lives of queer people because 39% of queer adults have faced rejection from their birth families. Found families can fulfill survival functions as well as emotional ones. For example, 40% of homeless youth are LGBTQ+, and found families can sometimes help find someone a place to stay. For these people, family becomes not a biological happenstance, but a group of supportive people providing unconditional support. So, especially with the homelessness that sadly is so common, sometimes it takes people outside the family to provide a safe home for LGBTQ+ youth. An article in Education Northwest quotes Dr. Christian Rummel, principal consultant for Mentorist Counseling, as saying, chosen family is about belonging, connectedness, and building a network of support with people who are in your corner. He says, in a climate that often shames, stigmatizes, and others LGBTQ+ people, finding your chosen family, including building relationships with people who can mentor and guide you, can be a powerful way to build resilience. I also found it interesting that some research from the University of British Columbia says that chosen families are found to be particularly important to males, to queer males compared to females, because according to research, masculinity often discourages men from expressing their feelings, and that mixed with internalized homophobia makes it harder to deal with the stigma of the LGBTQ+ community, which then can further isolate queer men from their biological families and society altogether. So what are your thoughts? Is that something that you saw in other kids in high school? Did you see anybody kind of finding a family outside of their biological family because they had been rejected? Luckily, I think that your high school had a lot of open-minded families sending their kids there, but is that something you ever saw?
Well, it's hard to say because I don't think that that's the kind of community that it's really easy to see in a school setting. I think that those connections tend to be things that appear outside of school, the same way that, you might not know if someone in your class is dealing with homelessness or dealing with food insecurity or dealing with poverty. You might not know if someone's family is abusive or rejecting them. And a lot of times it's connections that form outside of this sort of I don't know, there's something artificial about the school setting to me that, you tend to be thrown together with a lot of people that you might not have a lot in common with. And so I suspect that for a lot of people, the connections that they might consider to be their found family would come up in maybe extracurriculars, your dance group. A dance group at Penn is where a lot of Irene's friends were from, almost all of them, I think. An athletic group, creative groups, that kind of thing. I don't know that it's something that I saw a lot of in school.
Okay. I thought it was kind of interesting, that part about men, just thinking about all the talk about this male loneliness epidemic and male toxicity and all of this stuff. It feels to me, having been around for a long time, that we went through a period of time where there was more acceptance, particularly of gay people. Maybe not. I mean, people didn't really even talk about transgender people, but, there was a lot of momentum moving towards acceptance of gay people. And now I feel like we've been backsliding for a few years, and there's a lot more animosity. And it's, one of the things we've talked about with the whole Trump world is this sort of kind of permission given to say the things that for a while people knew they shouldn't say. And so now there's a little bit of that, like, more hostility towards gay people, I feel like, because it's quote unquote allowed. And it just makes me wonder if that is making it a harder climate for men to kind of find their way to a place of self-acceptance and acceptance from other people. That maybe it got better for a little while and now it's worse again because there's so much this whole alpha male thing that's going on.
Yeah, there's been a really interesting resurgence in this idea of like traditional masculinity, which is sort of inexplicably associated with Trump, given that he is not remotely traditionally masculine in any way. But he does associate himself with a lot of people, like Hulk Hogan.
I mean, even beyond specific people, like he loves to kind of present himself as like the head of the military, right?
Yeah, there's been a lot of sort of effort that's gone into curating this image of like the traditional masculine men that Republicans are trying to bring back. And that's connected to all sorts of like the gym bros online and the health influencers. And there's a similar phenomenon going on with women and like the trad wife movement. But I do think that that's a little bit less explicit, I guess, in the ways that it goes about asserting itself. Whereas, yeah, there's this idea of like traditional masculinity. I mean, you cannot post something about, like, I'm a straight guy who loves his wife without people being like, it's gay to love your wife. It's gay to take women seriously. Like, even beyond things that have sort of always been interpreted as queer coded, like being interested in fashion or makeup or whatever. Like, all of a sudden, all these things that are just like, well, no, actually, it's very heterosexual for a man to like his wife. Like, there's this, I think, resurgence in just an absolute disgust directed at anything that's perceived as not just feminine, but also endorsing feminism. Like, respecting women is seen as weak and gay.
Yeah. So I can imagine not only is that probably fostering a lot more aggression in men. If men are embracing that, it's making them less appealing to women. And so they probably are lonelier.
Right. And then they complain about how no one will date them and they're so oppressed.
Right. But I can imagine if you were a gay teenager, male teenager at this point, how you might end up as a very angry, quote unquote, straight man.
Well, and especially if you're not someone, I think a lot of more stereotypically or flamboyantly queer men will find a lot of acceptance in the queer community and even among, cisgender women, which then there's like a whole other set of weirdness that goes along with that. But I think it's fairly easy to find a social group. But if you're not a guy who is into those conventionally feminine things, if you're like, yeah, I want to like play football and be a bro and also I'm gay, I think there's very, very little room for that.
Yeah, I think there is probably a lot of truth to that. And it makes me even more just grateful that Kalen Saunders, a NFL player for the Saints, is an ally to the LGBTQ plus community. Actually, his brother, Cameron Saunders, was a dancer in Taylor Swift's Eras tour. But so Kalen Saunders started an LGBTQ plus friendly football camp for kids, so that kids that, want to play football and maybe are gay have a accepting place to go. So I love seeing things like that in this atmosphere that you're talking about. That if you're not the guy that wants to like hang out with the girls and like do their makeup or whatever the stereotypes are about the gay best friend, that there's, at least some awareness that those kids need a place too.
Which is great. And it's great that those kids are going to be able to find, friends their age who might be going through similar things as them. And also crucially, that they're going to have mentors who it is so important, I think, for queer kids to, because a lot of times, when you're in high school, middle school, which is like already a really crappy time, like you're just sad and depressed anyway. And so when you add on at the most basic level, just like the political climate and the amount of hatred that gets directed towards LGBTQ plus people, or, piling onto that, distant family members who might not accept you, immediate family members who might not accept you, potentially abusive situations or being kicked out of your home. Like a lot of queer youth have a really hard time seeing a future for themselves. And so it's so, so, so important for them to have role models, for them to see, no, like there's a future beyond high school. There are people just like me who are growing up and they're married or they're not married and they're happy and they are doing whatever it is that I want to do. Which I think brings us to the really, really insidious part then of the argument about like, oh, queer people are pedophiles and they're trying to groom kids and convert the kids to be gay like them. And that's because gay people can't reproduce. They have to reproduce by converting people, which is ridiculous.
Which, by the way, I'm just going to throw in like Kalen Saunders also is straight. Like,
right.
He just wants to give these kids, like you're saying, a vision of there is a world for you. And even there might be a world for you where a straight, picture of masculinity professional football player has room for you to thrive in his world.
Right.
Which is lovely. Anyway, go on. Sorry, I kind of interrupted you. I just wanted to like give him a shout out for like,
no, that's very cool.
Having the security too, as a straight man, to just be like, yeah, I want to help these kids.
Because, people on the internet are going to be like, he's secretly gay.
Yeah.
Anyway, but yeah, that they're going to be like, he's secretly gay and he's trying to abuse children.
Mm-hmm.
And that is really, really harmful because that means that is a way of taking away those role models, of preventing kids from ever seeing anyone like them, from like a way of preventing kids from seeing that there's a future for them, from finding any kind of parental figure. And it's like, it's one of those things that, I don't want to be like overly dramatic, but it's like, it is violent towards queer kids to isolate them and keep them from seeing a future for themselves. It is violent and it is destructive, and it raises the risk of those kids dying significantly. And so people might feel like that's overly dramatic if you were to throw that out in conversation, but I don't think it's an exaggeration.
Well, and you get into these family situations, right, with like maybe teenagers finding other people who accept them and allow them to be themselves. And I think that can also create a lot of conflict with biological families because they will accuse those people of, like you said, like grooming or abusing their kids just by accepting them, because these sadly are, usually family members that think if they can just keep that suppressed, if they can just mash it down, then it will go away, or they'll learn to hide it and live with it, or I don't really know. I don't really know what
It's like the Aunt and K-pop demon hunters.
I was just thinking that too. I wonder if that was like an allegory.
I think it was. I in the Pop Culture Happy Hour episode, they were like talking about it, like her being very queer coded.
Okay.
Everyone should go watch K-pop Demon Hunters. It's very good and it has a great soundtrack.
Yes, it is very good. Anyway, the main character has this thing that she is trying to hide and not let anybody know. And she just keeps thinking, like, if she can get to this point of success in her quest, she can make it go away.
And her aunt is basically, like, her aunt is very loving and caring, but her aunt has spent her whole life telling her that, she has to get to this point where it goes away so that she can be free finally. And then in kind of the climactic moment of the movie, the main character is like, why did you make me think like this? Why can't you accept me the way I am? And her aunt's like, but I've tried to accept you so hard. I've tried to accept you your whole life the way you are. And the main character's like, accept me, like you can't even look at me.
Yeah. Like when she said, why couldn't you just love me or something? Like that I thought was heartbreaking because, in conversations and our work with our nonprofit Pride House and this podcast, it has been coming up a lot with your wedding recently that people keep saying things to me like Sienna's so lucky to have you as a parent, or that's so wonderful that you are accepting that way. And I appreciate that, but I'm also like, it feels so weird to me. It's like an imposter syndrome thing. It's like, I'm just doing the normal thing. Like, why are you praising me? Like, I appreciate it. It's very nice of people to say that. And it is a compliment anytime somebody says that I'm a good parent. But that's the bare minimum.
You're like, what? Like, this isn't what all parents do?
Yeah. Like, I don't know. It's just, it feels weird to have people praise you for like what I kind of think of as like the basic job of a parent, to protect and love your kids. But point being, unfortunately, that's not that common. Or I shouldn't say that common, but it's not as obvious as you would think it would be.
And I mean, it's a couple of things. First, like, the most likely place a kid is likely to experience abuse of any kind is in their home or from family members. It's funny, I've been working at the county attorney's office this summer, and every time you come across a violent case, it's almost exclusively a family member or an intimate partner. Like, this idea that there are all of these predators out there just lurking around waiting to pounce on innocent children is just a myth. And and I mean, I think there's a level of stuff that we're okay with letting family members get away with because they're family. There are things that a parent can do to their kid that would get a stranger charged with abuse of minors or assault on minors that parents like will get released, like just no accountability whatsoever. I think a lot of adults feel a sort of sense of entitlement towards the children in their life. Like, well, I had you and I raised you and I give you food and I give you clothes. What more do you want from me? I can do whatever I want.
Well, and I think a lot of these people, a lot of the parents that are not accepting in trying to be empathetic, they have communities and friend groups and church groups and whatever else that they don't want to tell anybody they have a gay kid.
Mm-hmm.
That's like shameful. And I think they end up saying, like, maybe not even saying out loud, but having this attitude that is really harmful to like make your child feel like they're shameful.
Mm-hmm.
Like this is our shameful secret.
Which also sounds like K-pop Demon Hunters. Maybe we need to do an episode on K-pop Demon Hunters.
Yeah, let's do it. We didn't have anything scheduled for our next episode because we've been slammed and we're in brainstorming mode. So let's do that next time. Next time we'll talk about K-pop Demon Hunters. So if you haven't seen it, watch it so you'll know what we're talking about.
It's on Netflix. It's very good.
Yeah, I think that'd be good because that really it is an interesting one too because the character, her aunt, is a likable character.
Mm-hmm.
She's shown as being warm and loving and certainly not that role that you often see in like Disney movies with the, evil stepmother
or specifically the role that a lot of women of color get portrayed as in in Disney movies of like, yeah, this cold, unfeeling, and we must learn to connect with her through her different culture. Like, she's not that at all.
Yeah.
And yet there's still like this tension there. Yeah, it's fun. Stay tuned.
Yeah. I mean, I think that is something for family members to remember, that you can be warm and loving and say all of the, I love you and I care about you and I want the best for you. And you don't have to be a mean, aggressive, violent person. You can feel like you are acting in kindness and love and still do great harm just through not accepting. Or I think a lot of people don't recognize that saying, I love you, but I don't approve of your lifestyle. I love you, but I can't recognize your marriage. That is a powerful form of rejection of who you are as a person.
I have a queer kid, straight mom rule that if you're ever tempted to say, I love you, but reconsider what you're saying.
Yeah. Yeah.
Especially in family settings, right? Like if you're saying that to someone you're dating that you're breaking up with, okay, whatever, that's not my problem. But if you're saying that to your kid,
Yeah. I mean, there are like some appropriate, like, I love you, but you made a huge mess. Or like, maybe not. Maybe you should never say I love you, but because it doesn't change the level of love.
yeah, like I get what you're saying, right? That there are cases where you want to communicate that like you care about someone and also you're not okay with the thing they did.
Or I love you, but it's really hard to share a bathroom with you, for example. Might be something you might say to somebody you care about.
But when it comes to like important things,
Yeah.
if you're trying to keep someone in your life or like force them to maintain a relationship with you by saying, I love you, I'm just not okay with this part of you, like that feels really, I don't know, like manipulative.
That's an interesting thing about families, right? Like, you are supposed to love people that you don't even like in some cases.
Well, and it's quite funny because, like, eh, I'm not trying to undermine the entire concept of the nuclear family here, but you do have to, like, think why? Like, what is it about someone being my parent's sibling that means that they have to be important to me?
Yeah.
That's like, obviously, I am not saying that anyone should just, like, cut their aunt out of their life. But it is from, like, a philosophical perspective. I feel like it's interesting to sort of unpack that.
Yeah. I don't know. Families are weird, man.
Yeah.
But anyways, the gist of all of that was, I think it's a thing that is so much more common in the LGBTQ plus community, to need to find people to kind of fill in some of those gaps that all too often family members just are not willing to fill. And I think that, I mean, we know we have like hammered the statistics home so many times on this show, but having at least one accepting, affirming adult in an LGBTQ plus kid's life reduces their suicide rate by 40%.
Mhm. And that's what I'm saying, right? When I say that it is actively violent to not allow your kids to have that connection.
Yeah, it makes a huge difference. And so that is something just to be aware of, that those relationships can be really strong and really powerful outside of your family, and that is a healthy thing. I think if you are in a place where whatever the pressures around you are, that you can't be accepting and affirming of your kid, then the most loving thing you can do is make sure that they have those people in their lives.
Well, and as another, guideline, like I think because of that sort of the way that we as a culture valorize family relationships above other relationships, and the way we sort of assume that there's a level of entitlement that people in families have to one another, that leads to, if someone has cut ties with their biological family, if someone doesn't speak to their mom, for instance, because their mom is abusive, like, it is not your place to say, oh, you should send her a Mother's Day card. Oh, she's your mom. I mean, I know she's difficult, but she's still your mom. Like, that person has probably gone through a lot of agonizing over that decision already. And it is like, especially if it's not someone that you have a really, really close relationship with, you are not helping anyone by like inserting yourself into that dynamic.
Sort of tangentially, really quick, before we wrap this up. At your wedding, so my cousin's daughter was there, who is in her late 20s. And I guess she was saying that there's a lot of stuff on social media that is encouraging young people to, if the relationships aren't healthy, cut ties.
Mm-hmm.
Which was kind of interesting because that was in the context with two women at that table who have adult children who are not speaking to them anymore.
Mm-hmm.
But speaking to how complicated families are, I think there are also adults who are taking that advice and saying, oh, because my mom has different religious beliefs or different values or accepts her queer grandkid, she's an unhealthy person, so I should cut her out of my life.
Well, it's this unfortunate dynamic where, like, because I think therapy has become so much more widely accepted and accessible, unfortunately, a lot of people will then weaponize the terms that come up in therapy, right? They'll weaponize abuse or unhealthy. Like, I saw someone saying that, people will do this with boundaries, right? Where they will say, well, I'm just setting a boundary. Like, I don't want you to talk about the hard things in your life. That's just a boundary of mine.
Yeah.
Someone said, I had an ex-boyfriend who told me that one of his boundaries was that I wasn't allowed to go out alone.
That's not a boundary.
No. And so, yeah, like people will absolutely weaponize this idea that I'm setting boundaries with my parents by not letting them see their grandchildren. Like, no, you're just being cruel.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that, there are also a lot of people who have never been told that they can set boundaries with their parents and that might be something they should do.
Right.
It's not really your place to assume that they got their advice from TikTok as opposed to an actual therapist. If you have a casual friend who says, yeah, I don't talk to my mom, you can't just assume that, oh, they got that from TikTok.
Right. But there is a non-zero chance that that's the case.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Messy stuff, but very important to make sure that people who do not have supportive families can find the support from other people in their lives. And if you have a chance to be that for somebody, that's really important too. So I guess next episode, we are talking about K-pop Demon Hunters, which should be fun. And we hope everyone's having a good end of your summer and gearing up for whatever fall means in your family. And we'll catch you next time. Bye. If you found this episode interesting, informative, amusing, please review and follow us on your podcasting platform of choice. Getting those reviews and follows really helps us show up more in the algorithm and be able to reach more people to help them. You can find us on social media, Instagram, and Threads at queerkid.straightmom, Blue Sky at qksm.bsky.social, and Facebook at queerkidstraightmom. We are no longer on Twitter.